Morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm out here today in what I like to call the wilds of Dawn Township, and have I got a story for you today. It's a little bit different. It's not anything to do with food, but it's more to do with history. And I have a couple of guests coming today. Because of the pandemic, I am limiting the amount of people I talk to and see. But we are out here today on the Tackaberry farm, and I have a couple of guys going to come along here and tell us this story in a few minutes. And at the end of the video, if you watch the whole video, I've got something special that everybody has to do. And well, you'll have to stay to the end of the video to find out what it is. So anyway, they're going to be along here in a minute, and we'll tell you about it. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm out here at the Tackaberry farm, and I've got Tom Kerr and Paul Dalton and Wesley with me, and we're going to tell a little story. And well, I'm not even going to get into it because Tom's going to tell the story. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, this is a story about a Dawn farm, and every farm has a story, some more interesting than others, and I think this is a little more interesting than just raising a few pigs and cows. And this is the Tackaberry farm, and it was surveyed in 1820, and for about 50 years, not much happened. But the survey crew that came through in 1820 weren't really that good. They added a couple of links to every chain that they did. And so when they came down the 5th concession road, they were given a little too much land to every farmer. So this farm that we call the Tackaberry farm, 50 acres, should be 990 feet wide, except it's 19 feet too wide. So instead of getting 50 acres, we get about 51 acres. And because of it, there's jogs in the road, because the survey crew's going down the 6th concession and the 4th concession. We're doing it right, and the ones here we're doing it wrong, and so we have jogs in the road. But anyway, about 50 years later, the Crown sells this farm to a man, and he flips it in a year, and another man flips it, and then finally John Tackaberry, a real farmer, buys the 100 acres. And it's mainly trees, and they do a lot of logging, and they start to clear the land, except it's very wet. It's horribly wet and swampy and clay. And so around 1911, John Tackaberry applies to have a ditch built. And in the tradition of ditches, if you apply to have a ditch dug, it becomes, the ditch is named after you. And so at this point, John Tackaberry applies, and the records go to the office, and we have Paul Dalton here this morning, who's going to explain how we dig ditches and what happened that resulted in this excellent ditch here that's lasted more than 100 years. Paul, take it away.
Okay, Tom. Well, Tom came into my office one day just because this Tackaberry drain, where he owns land on, he needed maintenance done. I believe it was a culvert at the time. And the way it works with the Drainage Act, you can do maintenance on any drain as per if you have a pertinent bylaw. It speaks to the culvert that's here. So we got going back in the records. I said, well, it was a kind of a day, and Tom's a very interesting gentleman. He's always got a great story. So as we went on, I said, give me just a couple minutes. We'll go down. We'll get the old report out. We'll take a quick look, make sure everything's as it needs to be in the bylaw. So when I did, we got thumbing through the old report, and we got some things here. I actually got the original petition that was sent in by Mr. Tackaberry and subsequent owners on the drain all the way down to Longs Creek, and I have the original report that was written by a Mr. George McCubbin, and the original bylaw. The total cost of the drain back in 1913, well, the report's 1912, early 1912. The bylaw was 13, so it was built somewhere in the middle, but $1,092. And that was bridges, ditch, the whole deal back at the time. So we found that quite interesting. And then you're going to go on and speak about the Tackaberries.
Yeah,
and,
I will.
If Denny takes a picture of this here, I've held it down. This is the original profile of the drain. You can see there's the full width, there's all the owners, and where the drain runs along the side of the 5th concession road here. And you can see back in the day it varied from 3.5 feet for the most part in depth. And I've got some subsequent reports. Mr. McCubbin actually wrote four reports for improvement on the drain, and it's been improved a couple times till the latest one was in 1984. Herb Todgham wrote a report, which was the last time, and that usually was what happened in the late 70s, early 80s. The land was all drained out here, and so they were dug to the elevation they need to be to drain everything. Not a great deal of improvements after that, but and these are being held down. If you see this, Dennis they're being held down by a pair of tack skates, which Tom will talk about, but these particular skates back in the day were made. This is the last model that was made that actually had kangaroo leather for the body of the skate, which after that CCM bought them and they went to cowhide for the boot, but these are actually a pair of tacks, and Tom will go on and explain that.
Well, the Tackaberry family came to Dresden, we're not sure, but they certainly purchased land here in 1876, and we think he was the uncle of a young man named Edward Tackaberry. And Edward Tackaberry was a shoemaker in Dresden. And his sister, Alice Tackaberry, married my great uncle, George F. Kerr. And they had a family, and so I'm sort of related to the Tackaberry family through that marriage. And anyway, Edward Tackaberry left Dresden as a shoemaker, as a young man, about 20 years old, and he went out to Brandon, Manitoba. And Brandon, Manitoba is the second largest city in Manitoba, and there was a hockey player, a famous hockey player from Brandon who played for Montreal Canadiens. And he was talking to Edward, and he said, I can't get a pair of skates that will last more than a month or two. He said, is it possible to make me a good pair of skates? So Edward Tackaberry said, I'll try. And he made him the first pair of skates out of kangaroo skin. And anyway, this hockey player went off to Montreal and played the season. And when he finished the season, he came back to Brandon, Manitoba, and he had a whole handful of orders from hockey players that wanted a pair of these skates. So all of a sudden, Tackaberry's in the skate making business, and he became quite famous doing it. And he made these you can see the sign on the skate here. And if you were a really good player and you had parents that had a few dollars, then they bought their son a real pair of skates. And so Tackaberry skates became the best skate in the world. And as Paul said, I think he finally ran out of kangaroo skin. They started making them out of leather. But when he died, his estate sold the rights to the name and the design to the CCM Bauer Company, and they continued to make tacks for many years, probably not as well as the originals, but anyway, so these skates have a connection to this farm, and that's why they're part of the story this morning. And so anyway, that's the name of the Tackaberry family. I don't know any of them that still live in the area, but we'll have to think about that.
Maybe some in Manitoba.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Manitoba.
probably are.
Yeah.
And of course there's lots of descendants of Alice Tackaberry by another name, so we know that family. It's the Kerr family.
This would have been the original petition that would have gone to the clerk of the township of the time, and it would just following this along, like this probably would have been in about approximately 1911. The report, like I said, come out in January of 1912, and the bylaw was 1913. So
and you can see the signature of Tackaberry here.
Yeah, right here.
And my grandfather, W.J. Kerr, is on it.
But like I said, when Tom come in and then we found out, you know, we got talking about this, the Tackaberry drain, and I told him, I said, well, you know what, I have a pair of tacks, like these are my own, this is my own pair of skates, that one of the fastest pair of skates ever in the arena in Dresden, that's for sure. But I remember when I bought them, it was the last of that model, and I remember the sporting store in Dresden was Bill Clark's Hardware, and he said, like they had the new model was out, he said, you'll never get a better pair of skates than these, Paul. He said, buy these because they got the last ones with the kangaroo leather. So to this day, you know, and so glad to still have them kind of hanging around. If I could get somebody to do them up for me, I'd probably go skating again. But it's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a fascinating story. I've told anyone that I know, and like it's just, you know, you think about
yeah, you could.
tack skates.
And here's the Tackaberry farm.
Little old 50 acres in Don Township. So yeah.
This is an amazing story. I'm just, don't you think, Wes? Mm-hmm. It's very good, and I want to thank Tom and Paul for coming out here this morning and telling us the story about the tack skates. I've found it very interesting. And what I'd like everybody to do, because Tom's a great storyteller, what I'm looking for on the channel is 100 likes. If I could get 100 likes, and I've made this deal with Tom, 100 likes on this video, he's going to come back with another story, and I'm sure it'll be a doozy, because if you saw the last one he did on the history of soybeans on Canada, really, wasn't it? It was the first soybeans grown in Canada. That I thought was a good story, and I like this Tackaberry story. And I know I've got a teacher that I've told, or Wesley has explained, that he's learned a lot more out here than he ever did in school. And I said, the teachers had better pull their socks up. And I think, if anything, this story here will knock their socks right off.
Knock their skates off.
Yes. So if we could get 100 likes on this video, I'm sure Tom will come back and we'll have another story for you. So thanks for viewing the video.